Shipley. I'm the Executive Director of Public Policy for Encompass. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. I'll be your pilot for the next hour and a half. We have a great panel coming up on robocall mitigation and a showcase for some of our members' products and solutions when it comes to that topic. But we also this morning have an opportunity to get an update on the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program from some of the key stakeholders that are not just developing and implementing the program at the federal and state level, but some of our providers that are going to be asked to make the most of that opportunity and try to make the economics work as well. So I'm grateful that you all are here. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really looking forward to today's discussion. I want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then particularly for our providers, if you could make sure you add not just what kind of technologies you're bringing on or intending to use for the program, but also your service areas and things. That would be great. So why don't we start with Brian?
All righty. My name is Brian Wagner. I am the Chief Strategy Officer for Visionary Broadband, and some of you might know us by our wholesale entity, Mammoth Networks. We are a facilities-based provider based up in Gillette, Wyoming, and our service area covers southern Montana through the eastern half of Wyoming, down to the Front Range of Colorado, and into a little bit of northern New Mexico and state of Washington as well. We have a mix of fiber and wireless. We historically have been a fixed wireless provider, both licensed and unlicensed. But a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we pivoted hard to fiber. And now building fiber is a big part of what we do. If I had to sum it up, I would say that we're a rural fiber and fixed wireless provider for rural areas in the Rocky Mountain West is an easy way to think of us. As part of my role as Chief Strategy Officer, the GIS group reports to me, and the grants group reports to me, and the regulatory team reports to me. So I'm heavily involved in the grants and the regulatory aspect of this, so I've been hip deep in BEAD for quite some time now.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Yeah. Sarah.
I'm Sarah Smith. I am the Federal Program Officer with the NTIA for BEAD for both Colorado and Wyoming. And I am responsible for all things BEAD in both states, helping them write their initial plan, run their subgrantee selection. I do monitoring. And I'm also the subject matter expert on BEAD for the states.
Brandy?
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm Brandy Reitter. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Broadband Office, and we're in the Governor's Office of Information Technology. My role really is to facilitate our federal and state broadband grant programs, as well as work with our partners, our partnering agencies in the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment on digital equity. We do policy, we do advocacy of telecom policy, as well as we'll have distributed over $1 billion when we're finished with these federal programs. And then we also work on monitoring and compliance to make sure that subgrantees feel supported in their execution of their broadband programs, and ultimately make sure that Colorado gets served with the funds that are available to us. So that's what I do. And thanks again for being here in Colorado. It's great.
Carl.
Chris, thank you, and thanks to Encompass for allowing us to join you today in what I hope is an interactive conversation. My name is Carl Guardino. I'm Vice President of Global Government Affairs and Policy for a pre-public technology company called Tarana Wireless. And I try not to be presumptuous that you're familiar with a 15-year-old but still pre-public company. So very briefly, as you asked, the origin of the company and the technologies. It was created about 16 years ago, this coming February, primarily by 3 immigrant PhD graduate students who are earning their degrees here in the United States. They met in the International House. They came from communities where it was visceral. the digital divide challenges in those communities. So they set it off as their life's work to help bridge the digital divide. They did their PhD thesis, how do we help impoverished villagers in Ghana, in Africa, where none of them were from? They got an A, and they started a company, because that's what we do in America's innovation economy. Fast forward nearly 16 years, those 3 PhDs are now 28 PhDs, 300 engineers, 450 employees, and 1 political science major. And 30 patents. All of our intellectual property is here in the United States. All of our manufacturing is done by 2 US headquartered companies, all in North America. So the technologies you asked, thank you. Legacy fixed wireless has played a critical role in helping those where fiber is simply just not an option. Yet there are limitations that these 3 PhDs and now 28 PhDs have worked to overcome. And in our 30 patents, the 2 biggest of those technological breakthroughs are, 1, the ability to do non-line of sight. Why is that important? 4 out of 5 families in the United States don't have the luxury of direct line of sight between their home and a vertical asset, and the ability to cancel noise, whether in licensed or unlicensed spectrum, and Tarana Wireless is in both. So, did anyone else eat one of those chocolate muffins with breakfast, or was it just me? Anyone else eat one? Okay, well that was about 150 calories, so let's burn off a couple. If you're comfortable with it, so that I can demonstrate what those technologies mean, please join me and just quickly stand up.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Well done, Chris. Chris teaches jazzercise from his 1990s experience. So the first, again, is the ability to do non-line of sight. So if Brian and Visionary are serving a rural community in Wyoming, and they have that vertical asset, cell tower, often a water tower, grain tower, top of a building, and there's stuff in the way. And it can be permanent stuff like buildings and trees, or it can be temporary, like the tree branch blowing in the wind, or a truck or a train going in front of your home, or rain or snow. So what they have done with non-line of sight is that radio on the tower and that radio on your home communicate with each other 5,000 times every second so that they can continually adjust. So Jade, perfect where you are. Jade Piros, if you could raise your hand, Jade. So Chris is a tower. There's buildings and trees between Chris and Jade's home, right? Or even worse, take your hands for a second and your tree branch. Oh, come on. You're a tree branch blowing in the wind, right?
This is a unique experience, everybody. You get into it, get in the mix.
Yeah, so we are constantly recalculating to find that best connection. By the way, great job. You can go ahead and sit down.
Great.
The second is the ability to cancel interference, whether in licensed or unlicensed spectrum. And again, we're in both. We're in CBRS, we're in 5 gigahertz, we're in 6 gigahertz, at high speeds and low latency. Wonderful speaker yesterday morning from Unity, I think. Wonderful speaker. But what we have to overcome as technology advances is that we have overcome a lot of those legacy challenges. Because he mentioned, well, latency is an issue. And that was the case with latency is an issue, and that was the case with legacy fixed wireless. It is not with next generation fixed wireless. Our initial product, 800 megabits per second. However you wanted to slice and dice it, our 6 gigahertz product doubles that to 1.6, and in 2.5 years we'll be rolling out, doubling that again to 3.2. So that's a little bit on the technology. We'll get into some of the other issues as we talk.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Carl. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here.
And thanks for being good sports.
Yeah.
You burned off 9 calories, by the way.
We only have to get up and down about, what, 16 more times?
Yes.
Right. The BEAD program, we've been talking about it over the last, 24 hours. I don't think it needs much of an introduction, but I think it is helpful to remember what the stakes are, and that's $42.45 billion, in funding for planning and infrastructure deployment and adoption programs across all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and then the U.S. territories. And I think the anticipation here is in 2025 that the states are really going to take the lead when it comes to this program. Which is not to say that NTIA is going to be hands-off. In fact, let's start at the federal level. And Sarah, we'll start at the federal level, we'll work our way down. There's been a lot of noise. One FCC commissioner in particular likes to talk about this particular program. Tell us about the success that NTIA has had in putting this program together. Where do we stand on the allocation of funds? Where are we at with the BEAD program?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Chris. Well, I'll just start off by saying I used to work for a state, right? I used to work for the state of Colorado, and I was a recipient of an NTIA grant. And one of the first successes that I think the NTIA did for this program was create the FPO program, the Federal Program Officers, because navigating federal programs without the support of a contact who's within the system is insane. It's just insane. And this program is historic. It's never been done before. And the NTIA really took that into account and tried to create subject matter experts to work with each of the states. So that's one of the first successes that I think is really important.
Sure.
I think the other thing that we do really well is we take feedback from our stakeholders. So a good example of that was the letter of credit. We got a lot of pushback from providers and states about the letter of credit, that it was just untenable for a lot of the providers. And so we worked with subject matter experts, we worked with the FCC, we worked with bank associations to come up with options for the letter of credit. Another item that we did was put out the public notice about the uniform guidance. For anybody who has received any federal funding related to broadband, the uniform guidance is the principles that must be followed on how the money is spent. So you'll get very comfortable with it as you apply for this program. And we worked with Treasury that had just put together the CPF program, and we worked with stakeholders, and we put it out for public comment, and we made significant changes to the cost principles for uniform guidance, including fixed amount subawards, which has not been done before at this level of funding for stakeholders. So I think that's really incredible. And then the last thing, which we'll talk about later, is the alternative technology public comment policy notice that they put out. So I think we do a really good job of working with stakeholders. We try to anticipate concerns like permitting and put together teams of experts to try to help us do better in those places, support the states in getting, reaching universal coverage with as much support from the federal government as we can offer. At this point, the majority of the states have had their initial proposal approved. So that means that their proposal for how they're going to run their challenge process and how they're going to grant out funds has been approved by the Assistant Secretary. That gives them a couple of opportunities. They can run their challenge process, which the majority of the states are in right now. Once their challenge process is complete, they can start their subgrantee selection process. We don't have a ton of states in subgrantee selection yet. I think maybe we have 5, Colorado being one of them. Wyoming opened their application window yesterday. So in terms of what that means for the funding, the states who've had received approval for their initial proposal have also received their commitment letter from our granting partner, which is NIST, giving them the provisions for the funding. They have access to 2% of their total allocation for administering the grant, and the majority of the rest of the money is in what we call a special award condition, which means it's tucked away somewhere and says you have to meet these requirements before we can give you the rest of the money. The biggest piece of that SAC is that subgrantee selection happens, that the states open their grant windows, they make determinations, and then they close their grant windows.
Yeah. Well, that's great. See, your federal broadband officer, Brandy, is already singing your praises. Clearly, Colorado's ahead of the curve.
Oh, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about some of the specific milestones that Colorado has achieved or will be achieving in short order?
Yeah, so the state of Colorado is ahead of the curve, and it's been really great. I think for us, we wanted to move quickly on the program because everyday people are left unserved in our state. They're falling further behind, and so we wanted to make sure that we were out in front. Which means we're a little bit of a guinea pig. So when and the NTIA uses us to test some policies, and they're really great at the feedback we've given them. But our milestones, our initial proposal, Volume 1 and Volume 2 is finished. Our challenge process is finished. We have access to that 2% funding for administration of the BEAD program, and we opened up our subgrantee selection process September 12th, and we're a little less than a week away from closing that application on October 28th. So we're really excited. We're seeing a lot of demand within our grant portal. And because our initial proposal was approved this summer, we have about 12 months. Well, we do have 12 months to submit our final proposal to the NTIA, which will be due next year in June. We're not managing to the NTIA's timeline. I think, if anything, we want to be quick. We want to be stealth. We want to get these dollars out the door. There's a couple of things that we're aware of. We want to make sure that we don't get bogged down in the supply chain from all the other states that are going to be coming online shortly. We want to have the most access to labor resources for our ISPs, and so for us, it's been a priority for us to move quickly. But for us, the timeline from the NTIA and our grant program, it actually lined really nicely. We were able to really flow through the steps really well so that we're not hung up on, challenge data, because I know some states will have volume 2 approved but haven't started their challenge process. So our shot clock the timeline has really evolved really nicely for us, and we'll be able to meet all of our timelines and ahead of schedule. For us, we're happy to be a leader in this space. We can't claim number one. That goes to Louisiana. Of course, we want that for them. They're so great, and we talk to them a lot about comparing best practices and stuff. So Colorado is ahead, and if everything goes well, by first quarter of 2025, we'll be working on those grant agreements for our sub-recipients. So really excited to bring this program to Colorado finally.
That's great. Sounds like you're making incredible strides. That's wonderful. I want to turn to our industry panelists. I mean, the program itself required a lot of stakeholder input and a lot of opportunities for the different, not just communities and different stakeholders to talk to the state offices, but also for industry as well. And so, to Carl and Brian, I'm wondering, what your companies are doing to sort of prepare for the BEAD program. I mean, obviously, there's particularly with Colorado getting closer to the subgrantee selection process. Where does that put you, and how are you all thinking about your preparations for the program?
Well, yeah, the preparations for the program. Luckily, we've been involved in grants for quite some time now. We've done, starting with CARES and ARPA and CPF and NTIA Middle Mile. We've done state broadband deployment efforts, and now BEAD. So we have a little bit of a track record of, we know what to expect. We're in more than 100 communities today, so we have a lot of the community relationships already. But even so, to prep for this, it takes a lot of time and commitment to reach out to these individual communities and let them know what we're doing, and where are you at as a community, where are your needs. But also internally, we have to break down the maps and say, okay, we need to model everything. And what I mean by modeling everything, I mean modeling fiber costs, modeling permitting. Where's that going to be? What are the big hurdles going to be there? Where are opportunities for wireless deployments? Where are existing towers? Where are other entities' existing towers? Do we need new towers? What, if we do need new towers, what does that permitting and easement access look like? So a lot of modeling, and it became quickly apparent, and I think industry and the state offices caught on to this early on, that fiber at every location is a dream. It's not going to happen. And once we get into the actual modeling of these areas on the front end, the reality hits you in the face pretty quickly that, you know, $25,000 for a location to build fiber everywhere for a CBG, it's not viable. It's not a good use of resources. So a lot of what we do is trying to find that balance between how much fiber do you build as much fiber as possible, but it's still reasonable and is still operationally efficient, and then backfill that with wireless, fixed wireless. Luckily, we do both. We work with Carl's company. We've got a lot of Tarana deployed. We've got a history of both wireless and fiber. So, I'm not sure how the small providers are going to tackle this. If you don't have expertise in both fiber and wireless, you're going to be behind in the planning right away. And if you're just waited until CBO launched the portal to get involved with the community conversations, you're going to be way behind. So it's been a year-long process, really. So when the state opened the portal, we had already done a significant amount of work, and we were ready to go.
Yeah. Said. Brian, well said. And what Brian emphasized, as with anything in life, and I worked my way through college hanging drywall, you use the right tool for the job. Where the right tool is fiber, use it, and use it wherever you can. If it becomes way too costly, especially in rural America, but not limited to rural America, or if it's going to take way too long to deploy, as Brandy emphasized, that every day that people are not served, they fall further behind, so timely deployments matter, then use a different tool. The key is it's a tool that can accomplish the goals. And the NTIA and the legislation were very clear. And remember, they're floors, not ceilings. Speeds of at least 100 down and 20 up. Now, legacy fixed wireless had a really difficult challenge with the upload side of that equation. Not true with next generation fixed wireless. The latency of less than 100 is key. And that's really tough for some solutions like low Earth orbit satellites, which has a role, but you got to pick the right tool for the job. So as a technology company, what Tarana Wireless tries to do with our currently 350 ISP partners like Visionary Broadband is to be a bridge and to bring together hardworking, overstretched state broadband officers and public officials and our ISP partners out to tower sites, so that they can see that technology is advanced, that we can stretch limited funds to reach every family and broadband serviceable location, and we can do it in a timely way. I think we had a map, but I'm not sure we're showing that. In just the last 15 months, we've shown the respect to state broadband offices to come out now to 28 state broadband officers, to an ISP in their community that they respect, go to the tower site, ask in-depth questions, then go to a customer, meet in their front yard and sit in their living room and talk about what their experience was before they had connectivity or reliable, affordable, high-speed, low-latency connectivity, and what their experience is like now. We call it experiencing is believing. If any of you want to come We are now deployed not just in 26 countries, but 47 of the 50 states, 1 of every 10 counties in the United States, 20 million homes passed. If you want to come on one of these visits, let me know. My colleague Gabriel will be in Idaho tomorrow. I'll be in Oklahoma on Thursday, Montana on Friday, and Mississippi on Monday. Because people deserve to know that if we're investing hard-earned tax dollars, federal and state funds, that it's going to work and that it's proven.
Yeah. Sarah, as we thinking about what we just heard, I mean, as NTIA was putting the program together, and again, trying to make the economics meet the opportunity, is that the primary challenge that NTIA has seen in terms of what technologies are being deployed? What challenges, has NTIA, sort of found as it's put the program together? And if I could sort of combine one of the other questions I was going to ask you, as Carl was just mentioning, this is a statutory program. Some of the provisions are immutable; they cannot be changed. There's very little that NTIA could do, but there are some areas where states can make some changes. So if you could just talk about how NTIA has addressed the challenges of helping the economics meet the opportunity, or then also just sort of break down for us where states have an opportunity to adjust the program to meet those needs, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting ways that we did that was we came up with a calculation for areas in each state that are termed high-cost areas, that are areas that it's just known it's going to cost so much more to get there. And so the NTIA ran a number of calculations, which is on our website, so you can check those calculations if you're interested. To provide more allocation to states that had greater numbers of high-cost areas to support states in still bringing reliable broadband services to those broadband serviceable locations. And we also allowed for those high-cost areas, we gave the states the opportunity to waive the 25% match requirement for the project. They don't have to come to the NTIA for that. That is one of the areas that the states have the jurisdiction to programmatically waive at the top. Some states have chosen to do that. Some states have chosen not to do that. There's a number of other areas within the bipartisan infrastructure law and the BEAD NOFO, and I'll just pull out my trusty notes here.
I'm glad you bring the NOFO.
So one of the places was the match. So we allowed states to either choose to include in-kind match or not. We allowed states to choose to cover the 25% match or hand it down to their applicants. We allowed states to design their scoring criteria. So there was primary and secondary scoring requirements. 75% of the score had to be in the primary scoring criteria, 25% in the secondary scoring criteria, and there were a number of items that had to be required in the primary scoring. But the rest of it, we let the states come up with the items that were important to the state for their secondary scoring criteria and what we're calling, I think it's like alternative, I can't remember the name exactly right now, but it was like other areas of importance for them. And they also get to decide how they score, what the weighting looks like, how many points, whether it's a point system, all of that. We also gave them opportunity to identify how they're planning on spending 20% of the funding. So these are all sections of the initial proposal that you can view online. Each state has posted theirs. We gave them the opportunity to identify how they're going to run subgrantee selection, what that's going to look like. There's some parameters around that, but some states chose to do it in one round. Some states chose to do it in multiple rounds. Some states chose to do just priority broadband projects in round 1, non-priority broadband projects in round 2, and alternative tech in round 3. We gave them the opportunity to build their own challenge portal. I mean, it goes on, and I don't have to go through all of it. But we we really tried to give states the ability to own this project. This is the state's opportunity to go forth and meet the needs of their citizens. And this has never been done before. This level of flexibility for a state within a federal program is sort of unheard of. And states, you really got to see how each state chose to pursue this. And it's interesting as an insider, but also as a former state employee, you know, it's really true that one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
And so it's really incredible to see what each state has done.
Yeah. Brandy, we didn't get a chance to talk, but you don't know this about me. I actually lived in Colorado for 6 years growing up, went to high school here, have a great love for Colorado. I'm wearing my Colorado Avalanche socks. Apologies to any other NHL fans out there. But Colorado is a really unique place because of the diversity of its needs, I think, when it comes to connectivity. I mean, you know, most folks don't realize that the eastern half of the state is plains as far as the eye can see. Then you hit the foothills, and you've got mountains, and you've got another unique set of challenges when it comes to deploying broadband and deploying and making connectivity. So, talk a little bit about how Colorado has taken that flexibility that Sarah was talking about and how you're working to sort of ensure equitable access to broadband and connectivity.
Yeah, well, it's great. It's good to hear your Colorado story, and yeah, we'll have you back anytime.
Well, Mom and Dad live in Aurora, so they'll be here tonight.
Good. That's a great question, and thank you for acknowledging the uniqueness about our state. You know, we do have plains, we have mountains, rivers, and everything in between, and we also have, you know, our major urban corridors as well as our rural folks. And so our BEAD program, and I do agree with Sarah, the NTIA has granted us a lot of flexibility to kind of make the program our own within the context of a federal program. And so for us, what we did is we structured our scoring criteria to kind of meet the needs of our communities and our ISPs, recognizing that we have a variety of ISPs. We have community networks, we have private industry, we have utility providers working on broadband. And so, you know, we have to recognize all these nuances within industry in the broadband sector. So we developed our scoring criteria to really incorporate some of the community planning that's been done, because our communities have specific needs. And so we wanted our ISPs, whether you were public or private, to acknowledge the planning, the significant planning that's gone on with communities, oftentimes in partnership with industry within their community. So we of the scoring points that we were able to have discretion over, which was quite a bit, we allocated a huge portion of our scoring to ISPs that are working with communities to execute and implement their plans. And it's not just infrastructure. It's not, hey, here's the infrastructure. We want to know, are you focused on digital equity, affordability? Do you have any programs or partnerships that you have that you're working with other providers to maybe, you know, provide affordable laptops for people? And I'll give you an example of this. So, and I always highlight our Indian tribes. The Southern Ute Indian tribe in the southwest part of the state, they're what we would consider a community ISP. They partner with industry to do the deployments. But what's really unique about them is that they have a whole digital equity side of the broadband equation. It's not just about infrastructure, it's also about how do you get people connected that typically don't adopt the internet even if they have it. And so they work with their partners in the southwest part of the state, university, so Fort Lewis State College, the community college there, as well as other nonprofits to distribute laptops to their tribal members. They have affordability baked into their tier structures, and they also do digital literacy skilling up of tribal members. They've also even gone a little bit further to accommodate non-tribal members, because there's folks that live on the reservation that aren't members of the tribe. And so they've really expanded their access, not just deployment, but also their digital equity, to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to connect to the internet. So that's a very unique situation. situation, and it's a situation that we're seeing in other parts of Colorado. So for our scoring criteria, we really prioritize those ISPs that are doing that kind of work. The other piece of it as well, and I can't claim credit for this because it's run by our Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, the Office of Future Work, is digital navigators. This is another way that we have worked to help people connect to the internet and make it more accessible and equitable. We piloted a program a couple years ago in the southwest part of the state to hire people from the community to skill people up on the internet. And it's really important to hire people from within the community because they're trusted people, and they know their communities very well and the people that live there. So that pilot was very successful, and we this year we've hired 18 more digital navigators to help across the state in various communities that are historically unserved or severely unserved or underserved. Out in the community to help with that, and in partnership with our ISPs. We have a lot of really great ISPs also doing digital navigator programs as well. And so those are some of the ways that we try to do that. And then in addition, and one last point, is there's Colorado Broadband Office set up a technical assistance program that helps communities with broadband planning, working with ISPs. We have a broadband community ready program. So for those communities that don't have the capacity, that are unserved and underserved, that don't even know where to start, we've come in to help them with a framework that they can adopt to help be ready for ISPs when they come in and have their own plans, so they make their best cases for grant funding. So that's how Colorado's done it, and it's been pretty successfat so far.
Yeah, we're looking forward to, I think, to seeing how things play out, obviously. Sarah mentioned earlier that at least some of the states in her portfolio, are in there are different levels of having completed the process of getting certain parts of the process approvals through NTIA. I'm wondering, Carl, Brian, whether or not the flexibility that provides to the state, how industry prepares for that. I mean, obviously, you're dealing with different criteria, different sets of eligibility, on a state-by-state basis, and for companies that have a footprint in a state, that probably is okay. But if you have more of a national or regional footprint, that can be trying. So are there any of the criteria, not in Colorado, but anything that you've seen from the states in your region that has given you pause or concern, things that have taken some additional time or discussion that you need to have with either the FBO or the state broadband offices?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that federal programs and state programs are getting better by every time one comes out. They learn, they take the lessons learned from the past ones. So this one's better than the ones we've seen in the past, but there's still some things that do give us concern. A lot of the states have chosen to do their award areas based on census block groups, CBGs. That makes their job a little bit easier because it's nice and neat. There's quantifiable elements. But when you start breaking it down from a network perspective and start engineering these areas, a lot of these census block groups split communities of interest. So you'll have 100 locations on one side of a mountain range and 14 on another. And those 14 don't go to the grocery store at where the 100 are, they go to another neighboring town. But yet this is one census block group that has to be part of the same application. So that's a hurdle that gives us pause when we look at this is, boy, how are we gonna do that? Another one is the tendency to push the responsibility all the way down the chain to the applicant. And what I mean by that is, these are federal dollars administered by state governments. But us as applicants, as industry, we have to take on the responsibility of guaranteeing the performance of the permitting entities for both of those entities. So, for example, we have to make sure, we have to represent in our application that we're for sure going to get these permits from U.S. Forest Service, BLM, State Historical Preservation Society, state parks, when at the same time knowing that they're going to be at a historic level of volume. They're going to see more permits than they've ever seen and yet we have to take federal money through a state and guarantee federal and state performance. So that's kind of difficult to wrap your head around. And finally, some of the financial requirements, the letter of credit and the bond. Sarah Blue was talking earlier about what the letter of credit did for the NTIA middle mile program. It really limited the number of applicants, so I think there's some adjustments made there. But even so, when I talk to banks and surety companies, they're really confused about the level of commitment at the application stage, because they're being asked to insure things that don't exist yet, contracts that don't exist yet, and they're saying, yes, we're going to support this 100% and get behind it. Now, there are draft contracts available, but it's the surety companies and banks, they see this as jumping the gun a little bit, and that's the reason for audited financial statements, so that the state and federal governments can have a level of comfort with the applicant at that time with those audited financial statements. I think audited is a fair ask. So for the most part, I think we have a level of comfort just because of our experience. I think a lot of smaller industry providers are going to have some struggles with some of these commitments, but overall, I think it's struck a pretty nice balance.
Yeah. This is such an important question, and this is 56 laboratories of states, territories, and the District of Columbia, all now with their Volume 2s approved, except Texas, I believe, that hopefully will be soon. And so as you ask the question, what I'd like to lift up is the states that we see with the best plans and that we think are going to achieve what we call the North Star. And the North Star is the goal of the NOFO and the law, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to ensure that we've equipped every family and location with affordable, reliable, high-speed, low-latency broadband. Okay? And that goes back to what Sarah said about the extremely high cost per location threshold. That needs to be set at a level where, with finite finances, we can deploy funds to cover everyone. I want to credit our California Public Utilities Commission, which serves as the last mile state broadband office in California. They just sent out a request for information to next generation fixed wireless access technologies like Tarana. Here are two really difficult areas in California. In very rural communities. One in Kern County near Bakersfield, heavy agriculture area, spread out over 400 square miles to serve 759 families, and another one in the very rocky Northern California county of Trinity. Okay? Do it. Show us that you can provide affordable, reliable, high-speed, low-latency broadband. And what we were able to show was apples to apples. Not only could we do it, and we could do it in weeks or months rather than years and years, going back to Brandy's point about timely deployments, but we could do it for 1/10 of the cost of fiber. And fiber we love and depend on for our own backhaul, so that's just data. It needs to be the right tool for the job. So you can take all those savings to make sure more Californians are served. So scoring criteria that has an appropriate match as one of the primary scoring criterias, and appropriate affordability, and an extremely high cost per location threshold set at a level that isn't so high that you're burning through all your dollars, because we don't have equity if we haven't served everyone.
Carl, I'm glad you brought up the North Star idea. When we were doing our panel prep, you brought this up, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I think, obviously, I think every one of our panelists has that as a North Star, achieving 100% connectivity. Going down the road of alternative technologies, Sarah, I wanted to just ask you if you could talk a little bit about the public notice. NTIA just put out a public notice. Evan Feinman, the director of the program, issued this guidance, or this proposed guidance on alternative technologies and the uses of alternative technologies. What was the impetus behind that? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming it was the feedback you were hearing, but if you could just walk us through NTIA's thinking a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, Carl brought up a great point, the extremely high cost per location threshold. The high cost allocation and the extremely high cost per location threshold do tend to go hand in hand. The extremely high cost per location threshold is something the state is allowed to set, as opposed to the high cost areas, which was set by the NTIA. But what Carl was bringing up is the importance of creating opportunities for the state to ask providers for their best option for reliable high-speed internet. And in some of those areas, that best option is going to be an alternative technology, unlicensed fixed wireless or LEO. And this is one of the areas that the NOFO doesn't give a lot of guidance in. And so based on feedback from stakeholders, including states who are working very closely, Brandy's a great example of that, of working very closely with all the providers to understand the potential pitfalls of a program and where she can be supportive, where Colorado can support and bring the full force of their government and the relationship with the NTIA behind change. So I think the impetus overall was NTIA's desire to give as much guidance as possible to stakeholders, but also to receive feedback about the best way to give guidance to states on alternative technology. So the policy notice goes through 3 different types of scenarios where alternative technology would be allowed or not allowed. And then also it goes through a couple of ways of looking at some of the grant requirements that may need to be flexible when it comes to alternative technologies. So that came out, I think at the beginning of September, and they closed the public notice for comments September 10th. And we got hundreds of comments. So they're still compiling those, and I suspect it'll look similar to the challenge process public notice that was put out, where it's a redlined version of the original notice, and then they'll put that out to show the changes that they've made, and then they'll put out the final copy.
Yeah. To the rest of the panelists, what was your sort of reaction to the guidance, or welcome? Was it a welcome sort of development? I mean, obviously, NCOMPAS has, really been advocating strong for fiber as much as possible, but there are realities that need to be addressed. So, Brandy.
Well, if you just look at the state of Colorado, we really welcomed it. And I think, Brian and Carl and Sarah bring up good points. Fiber isn't going to go everywhere. And it came just in time because, Colorado being in the lead for all the states in the country on the BEAD program, we really needed to have that guidance to be able to communicate to our alternative technology ISPs. And we have always said that, the Colorado Broadband Office is a technology neutral department. We don't discriminate on technology. Put your best technology forward. Let's get people served and meet those requirements. And so I think when you're talking about creating an all-inclusive program where everybody has the opportunity to participate on the industry side of the house, I think it made a lot of sense. And so I was really glad to see the NTIA embrace that, come out with that guidance so that we can really, meet the mandate in the NOFO. And we worked closely with the NTIA on our comments, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the final guidance. But I think it'll get us to our goals, and it aligns with our mission and our goals as the Colorado Broadband Office.
Carl?
We welcomed it as well. What we would underscore, and we tried to do in our positive feedback back to the NTIA, is let's not forget the mission. And the mission are those 4 points: affordable, reliable, high speed, low latency. When Evan Feinman first foreshadowed that this was coming, he pictured it in a really wonderful way for visual learners like me. He said, Carl, picture it like a waterfall. And at the top of the waterfall is still the NTIA's preference for fiber. And then right under that on the waterfall is reliable, which they describe as licensed fixed wireless and other reliable technologies that meet those 4 goals. And then again, unlicensed, and then LEO. Regardless of where you are in the waterfall, please, 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 NTIA and states, don't bend on those 4 goals, because it is not equitable if we are going to be funding with taxpayer dollars something that is not affordable, that is not reliable, that's something that is doesn't have high speed, minimum of 100 by 20 on the download or the upload, or the latency isn't good either. We're not serving folks well with taxpayer dollars if we do that.
I think it was a great idea. The lift that NTIA is asking the states to do is enormous, and in order to hit all these locations, concessions like this have to happen. There are a lot of providers out there that provide quality 100 by 20 service today that's unlicensed, and there's others that can be deployed quickly and economically. So I think it's an option. LEO is going to be another option. That they have a role to play in this as well. So I think it's a great idea.
Great. I've got a couple extra questions that, we've played about 5 minutes, it looks like, on the panel. But do want to give members of the audience an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists, if there are any currently.
And to encourage questions, if I may be so bold, at Tarana we support communities across the world, but we also support our communities where we're located. So we put on community charity runs and give all the money away to help folks not as blessed as pretty much everyone in this room. So if you ask a question, you get, going into the holidays, last year's Santa Run long sleeve workout shirt.
Hold on, I've
welcome.
got my t-shirt cannon up here.
Yes.
I've got to go back and get it. Any questions from the audience? For a shirt.
And I only have female shirts left, so it's for that other person in your life.
So good luck, fellas.
Yes. Don't be shy.
There's a question over there.
Yeah, that she's
Okay.
Question is, Louisiana is far ahead, right? They just completed their round 2. Actually, round 3 just closed as well. So how do you? But they're sort of ahead of the game in terms of looking at, say, alternate technologies for meeting the needs of the communities. So how do you see that playing out, where maybe they are farther down the path, but yet you're still having your open comment session for?
Yeah, I can start. That's a great question. We work really regularly with Louisiana and compare notes all the time. The downside of being ahead of the curve is you don't have a lot of people that you can bounce ideas off of, and so they've included alternative technology. I don't know the results of their applications, the result of their who applied, but when we did chat with them, they embraced it as well, and I think their state has different challenges, and I think, I think alternative technology is definitely a player in Louisiana like it is Colorado. We have more in common than we do that are different in terms of the states itself, but, we'll probably talk to them after they're finished and they're done with their analysis and really see where that alternative technology, what percentage of it was. For our state, we did which is different from some of the other states, is we've already analyzed all of our high-cost areas and which percentage of fiber and alternative technology we're going to, that we expect and anticipate in those high-cost areas. And so we have a pretty good sense of where we're going to see a lot of those applications. And so it's kind of a baseline for us. And then what we'll do is we'll see how we actually did. And in talking with Louisiana, they've done similar work as well. So I'm really excited to see what they come up with, because of course we'll R&D on that one. They're really great too. So that's a great question.
I spoke with Vineeth and Thomas in Louisiana yesterday afternoon, and they're wonderfully transparent and accountable and open to interaction. And as Brandy just mentioned, they think they're going to be done with the whole process by about November 15th. And they received a pretty generous NTIA grant, so they will be able to go with the fiber-first approach of the BEAD NOFO while recognizing all technologies that meet those criteria they are going to consider. And it's looking very strong for what they're going to be rolling out in less than a month.
Brandy, I want to give the last word to you. We're in Colorado, seems appropriate. You talked a little bit about being ahead of the curve and it being hard to lead when you are that far ahead. So a specific question and then a more general question. Is Colorado chasing any trends that you've seen? Are you creating trends for some of the other states that you want to particularly crow about, before the audience today? And then, have there been any significant changes between the approval of the Volume 2 and the release of your own application guide?
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions in that question.
There are.
And I will attempt to answer all of them in a short amount of time. So trends that we're chasing, our North Star is universal coverage. I think that's the only trend that we're chasing. We just want to get this done. We want to do it quickly. Every day, our $826.5 million sits in an escrow account. It's just eroding away, right? Because the dollar is worth more today than it is tomorrow. So we're really cognizant of that. Really, I do think that Colorado, across the board for our state, we are a leader in industry, especially technology. I mean, we have a lot of really great thought leadership in our region, and our broadband office aligns with that as well. But, for us, our Attorney General, Phil Weiser, hired an Attorney General for broadband, and we were the first state in the country to have one. And so because we have offered a lot of best practice thought leadership to other states that don't have an Attorney General. I will tell you, if you do not have a telecom-specific attorney sitting in your office, I'm really concerned. Because this stuff is really nuanced, it's really important, it's high visibility, high stakes, and we have to serve a variety of stakeholders when we're talking about broadband. So we've been a leader in that space, and we actually we're setting up a group that it's called Attorney Generals across the state, across the country, to really we're leading in the compliance best practice, the legal parameters and the documents people need. So our compliance team and our legal team have set up a committee, and the NTIA actually leverages our legal expertise and collaborating on how to make this program work for everybody. So we are a leader in that space, and that's something that will continue on because we really dialed that in ahead of time. And then any changes from from our Volume 2 to our grant guidelines, I'm really honest. If we mess something up, we want to know, and we'll incorporate that feedback. If we need to change something to the extent that we can, we will. We want to make this program work well for providers in our community. And so there's been a couple of changes. Brian talked about the census block group. Originally we were pigeonholed into kind of having a specific measurement around how we were going to develop our project areas. Lessons learned, that doesn't work for industry. We did change that. So with our project area map, we did not. The census block group was not the basis for a huge, it had some influence over our project area map, but we actually were able to remove that requirement and really design project areas that can work for industry. Not all of them work. There is that one dot in the middle of nowhere, and that is legitimately in the middle of nowhere, regardless of whether you have a census block group or not. It's just the nature of the beast with mapping. So we were able to do that. We changed that. We also changed our contracting or our agreements, our grant agreements around negotiated agreements, so that we give ISPs in the broadband office as much flexibility to negotiate the best deal for those project areas. And so those are just some of the brief changes. There's a couple of more, but those are the significant ones. And again, Colorado, we're happy to be a leader in this space, and we really want to get these dollars out and be resourceful to our ISPs and communities. And it's been great to work with the NTIA and the NCOMPAS group here. There's a lot of really great people working to connect everybody across America, and we'll get that done the way it's supposed to get done this time. So thank you for letting me close out, and I'll let you take the mic.
Thank you. It's really a historic program, and it's an exciting time to be in telecom for that very reason. I'd like to thank our panelists, to Brian and Carl. These guys were going to talk about labor shortages and some of the other problems associated with the BEAD rollout. So if you have some of those questions, I want you to seek them out and talk to them about some of those things, and then also how we were going to address competition and market saturation. We didn't get a chance to talk about any of those things, but I'd like to thank my panelists today for.
May I just dispel a myth really quick?
Sure.
Because we've heard last mile several times, at least with our next generation of fixed wireless. Let's just set that myth aside, as Brian can attest to. When we're direct line of sight in a lot of rural America, we go 18 to 22 miles at the high speed, low latency that we discussed. When we're near line of sight, 10 to 12 miles. When we're completely non-line of sight, 3 to 6 miles. My own house, 2 miles from the tower in a redwood forest of mountains, 530 by 200 with a latency of 16 every morning that I check it, again, 2 miles away. So we have to break through some of these myths if we're going to ensure that Brandy and Sarah and this whole effort is going to be successful together. Last thing, please come for a t-shirt. My wife said don't bring those back home. So please, come forward, I'll meet you halfway.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate your time. Thanks. Please join me in thanking our panelists.